In this video, I'm going to show how you can take partial scan data, create a CAD model, and create a drawing from it. I'm also going to cover how you can create patterns, some items inside of sketching as well. So let me just go to File, Open. I'll choose this gear.obj. It's in millimeters. And you'll see here there's an OBJ file that I can pull directly in. Typically you might go through the Capture tab and have point cloud model, convert that to a polygon object in order to get to this step. But you can also bring in STL OBJ files directly in using File, Open as well, which is what we just did. With this model, you'll see it's partial data and there's some patterning involved. So we'll walk through the process of creating this gear even though we don't have a complete scan of it. You'll also notice the world axis is actually not centered on the gear, so I'll also show the ability on how to align the part as well. So let's first start with this gear and detect regions. So I'll click on the gear, click on the check mark, and on the left hand side is where your settings are, and all this is doing is looking at the curvature of the model, trying to break it into regions in order to make our selection a lot easier downstream. So you'll see here some dark purple, some light purple. And if I go up and say click on plane and I choose this region icon, it's going to make my selection of these different areas much easier. So you can see it's just selecting inside of where the boundaries are essentially, rather than me having to manually go in with a tool like this where it's just a general manual selection and having to do some basic selections like this. It just makes that process a lot less tedious. So let me go ahead and click back on the region selection, and I'm going to go ahead and fit a plane to the top of this gear. And then holding down Shift, left mouse button, I can add to what I want to use for fitting. Click on Optimize Selection, which just looks for the best selectable data. Go ahead and click Complete, and then I have my plane that's been fit to that geometry. The next thing I'll show is the ability to move that plane or make a copy of it to use as, I guess, the base of this gear. So if I go up to Move, select this plane, you'll see a little widget shows up, a little XYZ widget with some rotation tools and dragging as well. If I hold down Control and left mouse button on the direction I want to move this plane, it actually makes a copy of it. So it's identical to that top plane, but I keep the top plane, I just make a copy, and I can go ahead and click on Up To, which just says where do you want to move that plane to, and I left mouse button, I can left mouse button on the mesh, you'll see a little triangle right here, and just snaps that plane in the Z direction to that location. So on the left hand side you'll see we've made two planes. I'll just go ahead and hide those. And then now I'm going to create this inner body by choosing cylinder. And then we also have a smart selection tool that exists. And what this does, if you choose that selection tool when doing a fitting, I just hold down left mouse button and drag my mouse up to expand it, drag it down to reduce my selection. It just makes your, again, your selection process a lot easier. And for fitting, I can also constrain. So I can constrain the orientation, or I can constrain the position. In this instance, I'm just going to constrain the orientation. I'm going to show that top plane because I want to make sure that it's orthogonal to this plane. So I'll choose that. I'll go ahead and say Optimize Selection, and then complete the fitting. So now I have a cylinder who has an axis that's perpendicular to that top plane, and then I can use this cylinder to do my alignment as well. So let me hide that plane. And the alignment's a little different than what you'd be used to inside of Studio. So I'm going to walk through this process real quick for you. But in this model right here, I'm going to create an axis to be used. So when I go over the cylinder, it shows me the cylinder axis. So I'm going to create an axis there. You'll see on the left hand side in the structure tree an axis shows up. So let me hide that cylinder, and then I'm going to go up and create an origin on that axis. So this is just any origin that you can see I can place wherever I want. I want to place it on this axis, and it shows up in the structure tree as well. But say I want that origin to be down on that bottom plane of the gear. If I go to move, click on the origin point so that that whole thing is selected, say move up to, let me show that bottom plane, I'll click that and it'll slide down to that bottom plane. So this is still just an origin that's been created. We're not aligned with the world. So in order to do that, I select on the structure tree what I want to move, just left mouse button and shift to multi-select, and then right mouse button on the origin that I just created and say snap to origin. And what this does is you'll see it snaps to that world origin. And so now my part is actually centered on the axis of that cylinder, and I can use that as my base geometry to build the rest of this CAD model from. So let me go ahead and hide that plane, and I'll hide that origin, and you'll see the world axis continues to show, and we'll start to build the outer body of this gear. So I'll go to cone. Again, I'm going to use region selection, left mouse button, hold down shift and left mouse button, and just select all the outer faces of these teeth. And then I'm going to constrain this in the Z direction, and all that does is make sure that it's orthogonal. Click on optimize selection and the check mark. So now I have a cone that's orthogonal to Z, but you'll see it's a little bit long on top and bottom. So if I go to the pull command, I just choose the face I want to actually pull on and move. So I click that face. If I just left mouse button and move in the graphics, you'll see that I can adjust that. But I can also show that bottom plane and say move that bottom face up to this plane so it snaps there. Then I can left mouse button on this top face, and again say move that up to, and you'll see here I can also click on the mesh and it'll create that up to that top surface of the gear. So let me hide that cone and I'll show the cylinder, and inside here I can do the same thing. Let me hide that plane as well. I can take that bottom face, I can move that. If I want to snap it to this surface on the mesh, I just say up to, click on there, and so now that bottom surface is in line with the mesh. I can show my cone, which is my main body, and now I can combine these two together. So if I go to combine, I choose the body that I want to keep, and then I choose my cutter object. In this instance is the cylinder, and then you'll see it turn red, indicating wherever I click with my left mouse button, it'll delete that body. So I'll left mouse button on there, and so now I have this main body of the gear that's been created. So let me hide that solid again, and then now we're going to try to fit all the grooves for these teeth. So we'll go to fit cylinder, choose any of these grooves using that select region, and then go ahead and choose optimize and complete, and this will fit a cylinder as expected. And then now obviously this is a pattern that goes around this gear, so now we have the ability to go up to this insert group, choose circular pattern. The first thing you're going to do is select the object that you want to pattern. In this instance it's the cylinder. Then you're going to choose the axis of revolution or patterning. So I'm going to choose the Z axis, which is why I wanted to square everything up on this model, and then you'll see a preview show up. So it looks like 20 is right, but if you wanted to change it, you can change it to whatever you need to on the left hand side. We'll leave it as 20. Since that looks good, we'll click on the check mark, and then we have our pattern that's been created. On the left hand side you'll see a pattern object with all the components underneath it, and if I go to pull and select just one of these faces and left mouse button and drag, you'll see that I can move all the faces at once. Again, same for that bottom face. So now let's go ahead and cut those teeth. I'll show that main body. I'll go back to combine. Again, I'll choose the body that I want to keep, and then my cutter object. Since it's a pattern, everything gets cut. And again, you'll see it turn red, and I can left mouse button and delete all these, or I can actually go to select. On the left hand side, you'll see all these solids that have been created. I can just hold down shift, right click, and delete all those at once. So now I still have this one CAD body that exists that we currently have called the cone. I'll actually right click and rename that to gear. And then now what we're going to want to do is start getting the cutouts for this inner shape, as well as with these little I guess pea pod looking shapes as well. So let me hide this gear. We're going to go ahead and fit an extrusion. And what I can do over here is I can say fit as line arc or fit as spline. In this instance, I'm going to say fit as spline. I'm going to select this area, and then again I can constrain the orientation to the Z direction. If you wanted to fit it to a line arc, you just change it over here. And as well, you also have the ability to fit that extrusion and place that sketch on a sketch plane if the end user wants to do that. But for this demonstration, we're just going to leave it where it is. We're going to say make solid and go ahead and say complete. And so now you'll see a solid body there. Again, if you go to pull, grab that top face and this bottom one just to make sure they've been overextended. Go to the circular pattern, choose that extrusion, choose the Z axis for rotation, change this number on the left hand side to 4, say complete. I'll show my gear, and again I'll use combine, and I'll choose the gear as my main body, and then that pattern as my cutter. And so now I essentially have everything done except for this inside part, which I'll now show the ability to do some sketching. So let me go ahead and choose the sketch mode on the left hand side. Up top you'll see a ability to do sketch mode. I'll choose that, and then now I need to choose where I want to sketch. So depending on which surface I select, that's where my sketch plane will show up. So go into sketch mode and actually go back to 3D and show you guys again. So make sure you're in select mode, go to sketch, and you'll see I'm going to select on that face. Then I can go over to plan view, and that squares everything up. And there are some settings for display mode while you're in sketching. So if you go to display tab, I can turn on the ability to clip above the grid, fade below it, not clip. So you'll see they're just different display settings that are just check marks depending on what you like on your end. So I'll go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to turn off this solid body as well. I'm going to square everything up. Go back to the design tab. I'm going to go ahead and choose circle, and I'm going to base it off of the center of my world axis and just build a circle out. And now there's many ways to create these little teeth right here. I'm just going to show one, which is just taking this line, sketch tool, left mouse button, and you'll see that it actually snaps to the mesh as well, which is kind of nice. So I just left mouse button and place that line, escape to stop that line, and then I can build up my teeth. So I'll just quickly create all these. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can always adjust those teeth in a second. But you can also do, like I said, many ways to create this process and create those teeth. This just being one of them. You can also pattern those teeth around. So copy them and rotate them, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this mesh. I'm going to show you just finishing these teeth off. I'm going to create a rounded corner, select the 2 endpoints, do that on all these teeth real quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and go up to trim, and I can trim away this part where the teeth are. Let me actually go ahead and turn my mesh back on, go into select mode, and I can just left mouse button and drag, and you can see I can just place that where I want to, drag that top to where it needs to be. So I can work my way around. I'm not going to make this perfect by any means, but I can work my way around on all these teeth. And I can also type in values if I want to as well to make that 0.36. So there's the ability to type in values as well to make it more fine-tuned. But for this, we'll just leave it at that. I'll go back to 3D mode. I'll show the gear, and you'll see that that sketch is on this plane. So if I go to pull mode and click on this face, if I just drag left mouse button and drag down, it goes ahead and cuts away of that CAD model. So I'll undo that real quick and just show you again. In the past, we've used combine on everything else and just done a delete. In this instance, where it's located, I can just left mouse button and drag in pull mode, and it goes ahead and cuts away from the model. So now we have this CAD model that looks all nice and pretty, and we might want to do a comparison. So let's turn on this mesh. I'll go to measure and choose deviation. I'll choose gear and control mouse, left mouse button, or control, choose mesh, and then now it's going to calculate a deviation and give us a color map and show us where those deviations exist on this model. So then we can see how good we were in terms of creating the model. You'll see a red inside here, which just indicates I have not made a round inside there. I still have it as being a sharp. And then on the left hand side, I can adjust my tolerance settings as well with this little slider. But let's just say I want to make that round. I just left mouse button in the graphics. It gets me out of deviation mode. Go back to design. I can choose pull. I can choose this edge, and I can say pull that up to, I can choose this rounded part of the mesh. Pull that round to that part of the mesh, which is kind of nice. I don't have to worry about what the value is or try to guess. And I can fine tune it again to what it might be, just rounding it off a little bit. And the last thing I'll show is the ability to do a drawing. So what I'm going to want to do is only show what I want to exist in the drawing. So I'm going to hide this mesh. I'm just going to have this gear being shown. Go to File, New, Drawing Sheet. And this will automatically populate the drawing sheet with a couple of predefined views. So you'll see those here. And then I can also go and create a general view, which creates the isometric view. I can right mouse button and choose any of these views as well. We'll leave it as isometric, and I'll place it just in that top right hand corner. And then I can also go to dimension, and I can pull a couple dimensions off here. So you'll see things highlight. I just left mouse button on that edge. I'll get a diameter. I can also do a vertical measurement, clicking the two edges. So depending on what the end user wants to measure, different ways or different things you can pull out inside of dimension. You can also do various different drawing tools as well, like they're used to in any of the other packages they've used in the past. So let's just say I want to do a cross section. I choose the view I want to do a cross section on, and then I mouse over another view and determine where I want to place it, and left mouse button. Now I have a cross sectional view as well on here. The nice thing about this is it's actually a nice little 3D representation, which is kind of interesting and cool to show. But I can also go back to plan view and square that up again. And this drawing can be saved out with all the dimensions on it. GD&T can be placed as well. So pretty much anything you can think of for a drawing, you can do on this as well. Then one last thing, I'll go back to my gear, is there is the ability to go to File, Save As, and you can actually save this out just like inside of Studio and Qualify and everything else as a PDF, and it'll save it out as a 3D PDF as well. which is again is nice to be able to share with folks that have Adobe Reader. They can rotate, look at this model inside of Adobe Reader without needing Spark or Studio or Qualify. And again, that's just File, Save As, and you just choose PDF from the list, and that'll make a 3D PDF document out of it. So basically in this demonstration, I covered the ability to start with partial scan data, align the model however you want to, and then also went through patterning and then some sketch tools as well, and then also how to get to a drawing.